In ministry and in life, there are many times where we have to make a decision without being fully confident in exactly what we're supposed to do. And so today on Practical Church Planting, we're going to share with you 4 thoughts on how to make a decision when you don't know what to do.
Well, welcome back to Practical Church Planting, where in 15 minutes or less, we'll give you practical tips, advice, and encouragement to help you plant and grow healthy churches. My name is Brian Androsi, and joining me today is Dylan Dodson. Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Brian, you make my intro such more exciting than yours.
Well, I got a long name, so sometimes it's hard to make it exciting. But anyways, today we're going to give you 4 thoughts on how to make a decision when you don't know what to do. You know what's a good thing about this podcast?
What?
We have topics like how to make hard decisions and things like that. And just a few episodes ago, we're getting advice like buy rechargeable batteries.
That's right.
You just get the whole wide array of advice on this podcast.
It's like you get practical church planting tips, advice, and encouragement.
I know.
Anyway. We've all been there. You're probably facing a decision right now.
Yes.
Where you don't know what to do.
Yep. Like whether you should finish this episode or not.
That's right.
Yep.
Well, we're going to tell you how you should make that decision.
Yes.
Here are 4 things to consider. Number 1, pray for wisdom well before you need it. In other words, one of the things for me that, I don't know, I feel like I don't do a lot of things well, but things that, for whatever reason, it's been a discipline of mine for a long time, is there's a lot of times where you don't have a lot of time to make decisions.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be like this paralyzing effect of like, well, what if I make the wrong one, or what if I haven't prayed enough, or whatever. One of the things that I do is I pray for wisdom every single day. And part of that is like knowing that there's going to be times where there's not a lot of time to make a decision. And so knowing that like God knows before you do what you're going to face or what your church is going to face or all these sorts of things, like just asking on the front end, God, would you give me wisdom so that you don't have to like have like a 3-hour prayer session to like cram it in. Not that you have to do that anyway, but it helps me to know that we're seeking Jesus even before we know what we're seeking Him for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good.
So that when we don't have a lot of time to make a decision, I at least with all integrity can say like, I have been praying for wisdom. And whether this is the right decision or wrong decision, it's not because I wasn't intentional about it before this decision ever came.
Mm-hmm. No, it's really good. I mean, I have, and I'm sure most people have definitely fallen into this of not really crossing my mind a whole lot until it actually comes to decision making time. And I mean, we all need wisdom in all areas of life. I mean, in more areas than just this one decision that we're facing. And so having to be a constant thing that's on your mind and a constant prayer and in your conversations with God is. It's going to help in more ways than just what to do in this one situation.
Yeah.
You know?
And so again, I think that's a good discipline to have, is to pray for wisdom. And I may right or wrong, but it's like that's my deal with God. It's like I say, hey, I don't have a lot of time, but on this decision, but we prayed for it, and this is why we pray for wisdom.
Yeah.
And so ask on the front end. It does. I don't know if it makes a difference, but it helps me feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that this is something that we were asking for before it actually happens.
Yeah,
so that's one thing that you can do. Number 2, allow others to speak into the process and then listen. What I have discovered is that there's often there's 2 reasons why I don't lie. If I'm facing something I don't want to do and I don't ask other people. One is because I want to make a quick decision, and so probably quick decisions when you don't have to make them like right that second is probably wise not to.
Yeah.
Or secondly, because I assume that they're not going to say to do what I want to do, which then shows you that this might not be, this happens all the time. And so being able to let people speak into your life will help you make the right decision, which is why one of the coolest things that happens is when you allow others to speak into decision and then they actually agree with or they suggest something, the thing that you actually wanted to do. A, it makes you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not crazy. And B, it's like, that's really encouraging that like this, they actually think that this is what is a good path to go down.
Yeah.
And so again, if you're rushing a decision that doesn't have to be rushed, or you're afraid of what people might say, you'll skip this step, which shows that you're not being as wise as you should be.
I think that this is a symptom of kind of immature leadership, and because I think it's very easy if you haven't spent much time in leadership, or if you're kind of new to it, to not want to how do I put this? Not want to come across like you don't know what you're doing, or not want to come across like you're unsure, and so you don't want to ask for advice from people because you're afraid that maybe if you're younger, they'll view you as not a leader, or they want to follow you, and so you kind of go the opposite way and just kind of almost like steamroll everybody, and just like I'm going to make all the decisions. And there is an aspect, there's a positive side to being confident, but to not take anyone else into account and just assume that you know what's best is not what's best.
Yeah, and for me, again, right or wrong, I pray for wisdom ahead of time, and then also like God gives us community, and so God knows what we're going to face, and so right or wrong, it's like if people are leading me this direction, It's kind of like, okay, well, I think that's what God wants. I mean,
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but at least at the very least, it takes a lot of the hesitancy or the apprehension away, because you know you're not making a crazy decision, that other people spoke into it and kind of helped you guide into what they thought was best as well.
Yeah.
So allow others to speak into the process, and then listen. We'll help you make a decision when you don't know what to do. Number 3, is your primary motivation God honoring? Now, a lot of times when you have a decision to make, it's not like between good and bad.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get paralyzed because we assume that there's one path, and if we make the wrong decision, God's going to be mad at us, and then it's all over. But I think, like the New Testament talks about, that there's freedom in following Jesus, and I think it's much more freeing than we often assume. In other words, what does Jesus say? The primary command is to love God and love others, and you can do that in any job, in any place that you live, in any school that you go to.
Yep.
And so, what options are not God honoring? And if they are, at least both options take the pressure off. If I get this wrong, then I've sinned, or God's going to get mad at me. I think it's okay to know here are 2 or 3 good options. And I've asked people, I've prayed, and none of them are wrong. And so we're just going to go with one of them.
Yep.
But it does help to know, like, did I include God in the process, whether or not I felt like I got an answer? Because again, one sign of not making a wise decision, or making a decision you shouldn't make, is if you're not going to consider him anyway. You're just like, well, here's what I want to do, because you're afraid of where he may lead you.
Yeah, I think most likely if you're planting a church and doing things for the right reasons, and you're trying to make this decision, most likely, if, like you said, if you're kind of boiling it down between 2 options, where to meet or something like that, most likely neither one is not God honoring. Most likely you're not looking at one for maybe reasons you shouldn't, and ones that reasons you should. Most likely you have the discernment to be able to kind of weed those things out beforehand. And if not, that's a different thing to pray for. But but most likely you're looking at between 2 good options. Like that's what I've seen a lot of people that have struggled with making decisions. They're trying to decide between 2 things that'll probably both turn out fine, and 2 good things. And it's not to say like they shouldn't think about these options, but don't put so much weight on yourself that you think like, if I choose the wrong place, people aren't going to get saved, or
right.
That God's going to punish us, or these kind of like really drastic things we put on ourselves to put too much pressure on this decision that, in reality, if you've boiled it down and you've prayed about it and you've sought counsel, like you said, most likely neither one of them is not God honoring.
Yeah, and I think, this might sound a little cliche, but I think following Jesus is a lot of it has to do with the journey anyway.
Yeah.
Of like, you just, here's what we do, and we'll see what happens, and we learn as we go. But as long as you can, I think sometimes, at least in some circumstances, there are some possible decisions that you can make that are maybe more selfish and more prideful. And as long as the options aren't there, then I think it's okay to just see what happens and to make one.
And if you are boiling down to and kind of worried about that, maybe that's the option you don't go with. Like if you are worried, like maybe I'm choosing the space because of, I don't know, that's just the example, but because of a more selfish reason or a more vanity driven issue or reason, if that thought's even in your mind, we have conscience for a reason. If you have that thought at all, it's probably accurate. It's probably true.
Yep.
And go with the other one.
Yeah. So again, is your primary motivation God honoring? That might take away some options, but if all the remaining ones are, it's okay. Which leads us to our last point.
Yeah.
To actually make a decision.
Go for it.
Again, last episode we talked about one of the common mistakes of church planters is hesitancy in making decisions. It's okay not to have everything, or maybe not know the exact perfect decision, but at the end of the day, you have to make one. And so if you prayed about it, if you sought wise counsel, if you considered God and what you're trying to do, I think that is all he's asking us to do. Like that's literally it. And so make a decision and be okay with it, and not like, I just think there is a healthy, I don't know, fear of whatever the right word is. I hope I made the right one. Like that's always there.
Yeah.
But to me, it's way more of, I hope I didn't make the wrong one so I don't screw everything up, which is not, again, if we're following Jesus, not how I don't think that's what it means. That's our freedom does not mean that we need to be worried that we're going to blow everything up.
Yeah.
And so make a decision, and it's okay if it's right or if it's okay if it's wrong. If you sought wisdom and you did everything that you knew how to do, like there's nothing else you can do. So
I have never, and I've heard stories and watched interviews and stuff. I've never heard someone say like, our church went under, or I stopped being a pastor or whatever because of this one decision I made.
Yeah.
That was not a moral thing, not like a moral issue, but like because I made the wrong call, and so now our church is no more. That just doesn't happen. And so make make the decision.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it's a lot of times when things like that do happen, it's not because of they made one of two options, they didn't know what to do. It's because they made lots of poor decisions that they chose to do, like compromises morally or things with how they were handling the finances with the church. They weren't praying for wisdom. They weren't letting others speak into the situation. They were just doing whatever they wanted to do. If you do it this way, I don't know anyone that said maybe sometimes it hurts and ends up being the wrong decision, but it doesn't normally cripple an entire church.
Yeah.
If, just one random decision.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's inevitably going to be tons of times where you end up making the wrong decision, and it's fine. Like it just happens, but wrong decisions and right decisions is always what goes into, life. Life in general. So be okay with the fact that you have to make the decision. It might be wrong. You may be look back at it in a few years and be like, oh, that was kind of stupid. But it's most likely, if you've gotten to this point, if you've done these other things, it's not going to be a decision that is going to have, incredibly negative kingdom impact. Maybe that's speaking too broad. But just make a decision. Be okay with it being wrong sometimes. And
Yep. So again, those are 4 thoughts on how to make a decision when you don't know what to do. Pray for wisdom.
Yep.
Well before you need it. Allow others to speak into the process. Is your primary motivation God honoring? And then make a decision. And bonus tip.
I love bonus tips.
Join the Practical Church Planning Facebook group.
Oh, and we'll make your decisions for you.
And we'll help you or I should say
yes.
not and/or. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes.
And we can help you hopefully make some better decisions as you can learn from all of our terrible mistakes.
Hey, you know what? That's a good place, though, to seek counsel. Not wise counsel necessarily from the two of us, but there's a lot of smart people in there. People way smarter than us. So if you're dealing with a decision, ask it in there. Get some feedback.
Get some feedback. Thanks for listening, and we'll be with you next time on Practical Church Planning.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Practical Church Planning. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Practical Planning, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure you like or subscribe or do whatever it's telling you to do or should do on that platform.
And hey, if you are so tired of looking at our ugly faces, but you're not tired of listening to our beautiful voices, then you can find our podcast if you just search Practical Church Planning on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure not to just find it, not just to listen, but to subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Brian, tell them to subscribe.
Subscribe.
See you next time.